Boys and girls, for the past week, we've worked with fractions. We've added and subtracted, multiplied, and divided. When we multiply the numerator by the numerator, the denominator by the denominator, and then simplify. Dividing fractions is the same as multiplying, but with one important extra step. Before you multiply, you need to reverse the second fraction. In this video, we will review multiplying fractions using something many of us do, baking. Sometimes when we bake, we don't have enough ingredients, or we want to make less than what the recipe calls for. For this reason, we need to adjust the amount of the ingredients and the baking time. Today, we will be adjusting our banana bread recipe by cutting it in half. To do this, we will have to multiply all the ingredients by 1/2. Let's get started. Okay, so for the banana bread recipe, it calls for 1/2 cup butter. But since we're cutting our recipe in half, we need to multiply the 1/2 cup by 1/2. And so to do this, we multiply the numerator by the numerator, so 1 times 1, that equals 1. And then we multiply the denominator by the denominator, so it's 2 times 2, which is 4. So now, since we're cutting our recipe in half, instead of 1/2 cup butter, we need 1/4 cup butter. And another way to do this using the linear model is we have drawn out a stick of butter. And so since the recipe originally called for 1/2 cup, we see that we only have half of the butter shaded. But to show that we need half of the original amount, we have this model drawn out. You have the original half cut, but then each half is cut in half again. So now we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, which is our denominator, 4, and then only one part is shaded, so that's our numerator, 1/4 cup. The next ingredient that we need are bananas, and we need 3 bananas. And to figure out how many we need for our reduced recipe, we do 3 times 1/2. To make it easier, we can do 3 over 1, because that's the same as 3. So then if we multiply it out, we have 3 times 1 is 3, 1 times 2 is 2. So we have 3 over 2, which seems kind of confusing, but if we look at our picture, we start off with 3 bananas, and then we're dividing each banana in half. As we see shaded here, each banana is drawn in half. And then if we look at how many pieces we have shaded, we have 3 shaded pieces, which make 1 and 1/2 banana, which is the same as 3 over 2. Next ingredients are eggs, and we need 2 eggs for this recipe, but since we're cutting it in half, we'll do the same as what we did for the bananas. We'll put 2 over 1. If we multiply it out, we have 2 times 1 is 2, 1 times 2 is 2. So 2 over 2 equals 1. If we look at our picture, we start off with 2 eggs. Each egg is cut in half, and these 2 halves shaded in together make 1 full, beautiful egg. Sugar, which originally called for 1 cup for this recipe, but since we're cutting it in half, we'll do 1 over 1 like we did earlier, and then we multiply it out. 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2. So now we just need 1/2 cup, which if you look at the picture, we start off with 1 cup full of sugar. If you draw out half of it, we see that we only have 1/2 cup. So like before, we see that we only need 1/2 cup for our recipe now.
Salt. It calls for 1/2 teaspoon. We're going to take the 1/2 and multiply it by 1/2. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 is 4. If we look at our area measure model, we see that half of the pie is shaded. In our next model, we're going to cut the half in half again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's our denominator, and 1 is shaded. So we're now going to use 1/4 teaspoon. The recipe calls for 2 different kinds of flour and 1 cup each. So we're going to take the 1 and put a 1 beneath it. And so 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 2 is 2. So that calls for only 1/2 cup of each flour. If you look here, it has 1 full cup, and we're going to divide it in half. So now we only need 1/2 cup of each flour.
Recording.
The next ingredient it calls for is baking soda. It calls for 1 teaspoon. So we're going to do 1 over 1, and we're going to multiply it by half. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 2 is 2. If you look here, we have 1 full teaspoon, which is what the recipe calls for, and we're going to multiply it by half. So we cut the teaspoon in half. Now we only need 1/2 teaspoon.
We have one last ingredient that we need to get ready for our recipe. We need to get some hot water. We need 1/3 of a cup according to the recipe. But we're dividing or multiplying by 1/2, so let's figure it out. Again, 1 times 1 is 1, and 3 times 2 is 6. And that's of a cup. So here we've got our area model, and we've colored in one of the thirds, and then we're going to divide the third in half. And we have to do that for all of them so we can figure out what our denominator is. And then we count it around, and we hit 6, and we only have 1 colored in, so that's our numerator. Now, 1/6 of a cup is something we don't normally have when we measure with ingredients, so we're going to have to convert this into teaspoons and tablespoons, but we'll do that in the next part where we're putting all our ingredients together.
Now we're going to put the butter in the microwave.
Steven's going to add our 1 1/2 banana to the blender for our recipe. Here's 1 banana and 1/2 a banana. Steven's now going to add our 1/4 cup of butter to the blender. Now we have 1/2 cup of sugar. And 1 egg.
We're now going to blend the ingredients together. We are now going to add 1/2 cup whole wheat flour. We will now add 1/2 cup of all-purpose flour.
All right.
We'll now add 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Now add 1/4 teaspoon of salt, but since we don't have a 1/4 teaspoon, we're going to add 2 1/8 teaspoons.
All right, we're going to add some water, hot water. Now, normally, 1/6 of a cup is not a measuring thing that we see in our measuring cup. We usually have 1/2 and 1/4 cup. So 1/6 of a cup would be 2 tablespoons and 2 teaspoons. And we figured that out by converting and doing all kinds of fun stuff that we'll talk about later. Now Steven's going to add a little bit of the banana mixture to the bowl. And he's going to add some hot water to the bowl. He's going to stir it up and then add some hot water. He's going to alternate back and forth, adding the different liquid ingredients to the dry ingredients. And at this point, we've also already preheated our oven to 350 degrees, because that's how we're going to have to, the temperature we're going to cook it at. Oh, 325, Steven tells me. I was wrong. That's not unusual in our house. It all mixed together. We're going to spray our loaf pan. And a loaf pan looks like this. Looks like a little loaf of bread. You want to spray it well so the bread as it cooks doesn't stick to the sides and you can get it out more easily. We're going to pour our batter from the big bowl into the loaf pan. Now, one of the interesting things that happens when we only do half a recipe is that we have to adjust the baking time too, because normally for a full recipe it calls for to bake for an hour and 10 minutes or 70 minutes. And with half a recipe it's not going to be as tall, so we're going to have to adjust our cooking time as well. So we're going to set it for about a half an hour and see how done it is at that point, because we don't want to get it over baked. And it'll probably need about 5 or 10 more minutes to bake at that point. So we'll see you later when we've got our banana bread out of the oven. Okay, our oven's preheated to 325, so in the oven it goes. Can't wait to see what it looks like in about a half an hour. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yummy, yummy. Can't wait to eat the banana bread now that it's cooled down a bit. Yummy. Learning with fractions is lots of fun.
And delicious.